And welcome to Education, Leadership, and Beyond, Surviving and Thriving. My name is Andrew Murata, host of the program, and it is show number 154. Happy to be with you this evening. Happy to be live on Facebook. Happy to be a member of the Education Podcast Network. Check out all the great podcasts they have there. There's so many to choose from, so many great educators doing podcasts and great work. Super excited. Voice Ed Radio Canada, another friend of mine, Stephen Hurley. Great lineup of podcasts there. So thank you so much for joining in. I hope you are doing well. There is the Stephen Hurley from Voice Ed Radio Canada on. Stephen, we're trying something right now. I'm going to try to put comments up. So Stephen, say hello again from Voice Ed Radio Canada, and it's great to see you. So again, my name is Andrew Murata, host of the program. Leave us a positive comment on iTunes. Leave us a positive comment or for the show, a review for the show, things like that, because it does help us, and it's certainly getting more listeners and things like that. But let's get rolling. We're going to meet today's guest, John Eggers. That's right, Voice Ed Radio Canada. And Stephen, I'm trying to see if you can see it here. And John, we'll see if you can see those when we go. But thank you, Stephen, for tuning in. John Eggers is an educator. He is an author. He's a peace activist. We need that now more than ever. He lives in Minnesota, and he shared that the temperature was almost 30 below there just yesterday. So I'm hoping he's warm. I'm hoping his house is warm. But he is a warm guy. He is just really excited. And we're going to talk about graduation rate. These are some of John's things here. And again, he wrote a book here, creating educational change in the COVID era. And again, 100% graduation rate. So John and I connected. He sent me some of his stuff, and I was just like, wow, I love it. And here in Port Jervis, we started Project 90 some years ago. And I said to myself, well, why are we at 90? Why aren't we doing this? So this is something that I'd love to start here. And before we bring John in, I did want to share to my listening audience, I have decided to change my leadership role here in Port Jervis, and I am going to become the principal at our middle school in Port Jervis, and that'll start on July 1. And for me, that was an emotional decision. It was I really thought about it, but 17 years. I'm in my 17th year in Port Jervis, and it has been a great ride. I want to thank the very many families and educators that I've worked with here, the kids over those years. Think about all those graduates we've had, and but I'm not going far, right? And in terms of this graduation rate, I can help in my role at the middle school, help preparing those kids, use my lens that I have from my time at the middle school, at the high school, to work with our middle schoolers and work with our middle school staff. So I'm excited about that, and I wanted to announce that. But I'm really excited to talk to John here coming up. So let's bring John into the program and welcome to show number 154. And here he is, John Eggers. Welcome to Education, Leadership, and Beyond.
Thank you, Andrew, for having me, and kudos on your new assignment. I know you're doing well. It's a tough job, but you can do it. And just like everybody else out there, education and teaching is tough work, but we can do it. That's what we're trained to do. So glad to be here from frosty northern Minnesota.
And it warmed up for you today. We're at a 14.
Right now it's 18 degrees. I just looked at my cell phone. 18 degrees. So
you're gonna get a sunburn.
Yes, right. My dogs love it. My dogs love it.
Well, I'm glad we were able to connect. I had some tech issues the last time, but you were persistent and I was persistent. And that's what we need in education, right? We need that persistence to keep going. John, tell me about this mission. Tell me about where this came from for you. And I love it. I love the concept.
Thanks, Andrew. Yeah, I started teaching in 1964 at a small rural school in southern Minnesota. It was a Catholic Catholic school. I was teaching physical education, and my gymnasium was the basement in the church, and we had 4 pillars in that basement. And so my kids learned how to dodge pretty well around those 4 pillars. So that really got me started. I enjoyed it very much. And by and by, I ended up teaching at on the reservation in White Earth, Minnesota, and had a student there by the name of Harlan. And Harlan was a very energetic student. He was a really nice kid. He was a kid that just would not sit still. And I knew that if I didn't find some strategies to work with Harlan, he might destroy my year of teaching. So I was living on a reservation right near the school, and my therapy was taking my canoe, putting it on my Dodge Colt wagon, and going fishing after school. So, and Harlan was always there around, and so eventually I asked him to go with me, and so by and by we fished together, and I learned to know Harlan. And I guess if I had one secret, not a secret really, but one piece of advice for all teachers, that if you don't know your students, that's your first priority, just to get to know your students. And as you in your book you mentioned so often, Andrew, about relationships. Relationships are everything. And so Harlan and I got to know one another, and he became really probably the best student in the school. And I left White Earth after several years, and but I would come back and do workshop for the school and so on, and also see Harlan. And after a period of time, probably, let's see, about 20 years later, I ended up as the high school principal on the Red Lake Reservation. And I was looking at the paper one day and happened to notice Harlan's obituary in there, that he had passed away in a car accident. And Harlan had never graduated from high school. He eventually got his GED. But I often wondered, I could have done a lot more for Harlan as all of our other teachers could have done. And so everything I do with the 100% graduation rate project is dedicated to Harlan. So that's kind of how it got me started, one student. And that's why I don't quit either. You know, I'm not a young person anymore, but I know if I didn't do this, I'm not sure who would carry it on. So.
And you write about it, you come on podcasts about it, and you still have a great passion about it. And you've inspired me all the way here in New York.
Yeah. Well,
me saying 90% it's not good enough, right? And if John can achieve it, John, did you have people saying, well, that's impossible? There's just kids that aren't going to make it. You know, did you get
it's fun. It's in in order to this is the Project Graduate is not a school movement, by the way. It's a community movement.
Yeah.
Because schools have been trying for decades and decades and decades to graduate 100% of our students. And with all their good intentions, we just haven't done it. So 3 years ago, I went to the Red Lake Tribal Council. It was July of that year. And I made this pitch. I said, why don't we pass a resolution that we're going to graduate 100% of our students. And to do that, we're going to get all the citizens involved and make sure that they're reminding kids the importance of graduating from high school. And so they passed a resolution. I didn't realize that. I didn't think they might do it because, as you said, this is impossible. We've never done it. And especially at Red Lake, where the graduation rate is 40%. How can we possibly have a 100% graduation rate? Well, every student is capable of graduating, as you know. I mean, every student can do it. I've never been a student in all my 55 years of teaching that a student could not graduate from high school. They had certainly the ability to do it. And so why can't we do it? And so it's a matter of getting the community involved. And because so many of the Red Lake students also go to schools off the reservation here in Bemidji and several other towns, so why don't we just make it a resolution to make sure that Red Lake kids off the reservation have the same goal as well as other students too. So I began to go around to talk with city councils and the county commissioners. And so right now we have 407 organizations, including all the city councils in the county, that have this goal of 100% graduation rate. And I think we're the only county in the United States that has such a goal. But again, it's not a school movement; it's a community movement. Because I really believe that if every citizen, every parent, every neighbor reminded young people they need to graduate, it would become a mindset, and we could do that. Because that's how you and I graduated, because we had a mindset to do it, and we just did it.
And John, I love this book. Right? If you're not a big reader, it's not volumes and volumes. But you have 152. I don't want to short you, but I think it's 152 things that we can all be doing
Right.
simply as reminding them to graduate, simply as talking about the benefits, simply as
Right.
maybe putting your high school diploma in the classroom you teach in and referring to it and talking about it. How did
Yep.
you develop those 152 things that you have here in
Well,
the book?
again, by the way, I really appreciate tough questions. So anybody listening, be sure and ask me any tough questions you have. It makes me grow more. After you teach for 55 years and be in education and doing writing and listening to people, you don't really develop your own ideas so much. You kind of pick and choose from other people,
Yeah,
and just add on to what they said. So all those 155 ideas are things that teachers can do and parents can do right now. Things like, for example, put up your high school diploma in your classroom. How many teachers have their high school diploma hanging up in their classroom? Kids really aren't that much interested in your master's diploma or your doctor's degree diploma, but they would be interested in your high school diploma. And when the teachers put that up, they can talk about their high school. And teachers also, they struggled. Many teachers struggled to get through high school in one way or another. Maybe they didn't like a class, didn't like a teacher, but we still did it. We were undaunted and we did it. And so that's one of the first things that teachers can do. And then also, Andrew, if every teacher every day reminded their students, no matter what age, of the importance of graduating from high school, they could begin planting this mindset in the minds of kids. So, and there is 150 some other suggestions like that.
yeah. And I'm not, when I get down to that middle school, I'm not going to call them the seventh graders or the eighth graders. I'm going to call them the class of 2026, the class of
There you go.
2026, because you're part
Absolutely.
of that class and it's your
Absolutely.
responsibility to graduate. John knows we have a live audience here, and he does want some questions here. John, the biggest influence in my life about my graduation is watching my mom. And Mom, why don't you maybe share something on there that was the importance for us in our education, or if you have a question for John. But she's the one that got us up. She's the one that threw water on us when
Right.
maybe we didn't get up to go to school. She's the one that made us go to school, John, even when it was
Right.
closed. When we had a snow day, we went.
Right.
So she's
Yeah, I was thinking, one of the things you said before about it seems like impossible to graduate 100% of our students. Well, some schools in the United States do that. Texas has the most number of high schools with 100% graduation rate, 150 some. I'm not sure how, it depends on how you count your graduations too, how you count your graduates. Here in Minnesota, we do it over a 4-year basis. So any ninth grader, for example, if you have 50 ninth graders and you graduate 50 ninth graders, you have a 100% graduation rate. And that's how we do it. And so I tell schools, you have a magic number in your school, and that magic number is the number of ninth graders you have. And if those ninth graders all finish at high school and graduate, you have a 100% graduation rate. So that's kind of your magic number. But it still is possible to do it. And in terms of the middle school, Andrew, you can begin looking at your students, for example, eighth graders, and tell your teachers now, well, let's see how many of our eighth graders will graduate 4 or 5 years from now. And if only a handful graduate, you might not, well, maybe there's something that we can do more.
And let me ask you on that question, John, because again, I've been at the high school level here now a long time, and they actually drop out in high school. But really, what are some key things in there? What are some key maybe ages or steps in that journey that maybe it went south a few years earlier? Have you noticed? Is there a key turnaround, 4th or 5th grade?
Well, people always ask that question about, well, what are the factors why kids drop out of school? In 1996, Bill Gates wrote a book or founded a program, funded a study, and he called it the silent epidemic. And what he was referring to was that no one really has done a whole lot with this dropout rate that really is an epidemic. So now in the United States, we not only have a pandemic, we also have a silent epidemic. We still haven't cured that epidemic. And in that book, he gives all kinds of reasons why kids drop out of school. But I think the number one reason, if I had to pick out one reason why kids drop out at least early, is because they lack confidence. And think about it. If you can get through any situation if you have the confidence to do it. When I was a Peace Corps volunteer, and they dropped us off in in Montevideo, and we were young, 21 years old, kids, and basically, if I didn't have the confidence to say to myself, John, I can do this, I can go out and by the way, Andrew, I coached basketball down there, and so confidence was a big part of it. And if we can get our kids to have confidence and believe that they can do it, I know you do a lot of this in your motivational speeches. Kids can almost do anything. But I think probably the other reason is that right now we have kids that are getting C's and D's and F's in school, and some of those kids who get a D average will graduate, and that's fine. They get their diplomas, but really those kids really aren't finding a whole lot of success. Well, what if we said to ourselves, why can't we design a better program that would more enable those kids to find success in school? It may be an entirely different program than what we're doing right now. And one of my teaching experiences was at the Wilson Campus School in Mankato, Minnesota. It was a laboratory school, but it was a 600 population school was non-graded, and no schedules, no bells, this sort of thing. And it worked for kids. We graduated 100% of our kids because the school was designed to meet the needs of the kids. And so this is what I'm really hoping for in northern Minnesota. There's two ways we can have 100% graduation rate. One way is to convince all the community and citizens that they need to remind kids of graduating and do that relentlessly. The other way is to design schools that fit the needs of kids. And right now, we do not have schools that fit the needs of kids, especially Native American kids, where we have the graduation rate in Minnesota of around 50%. Think about that. 50% Native American kids don't complete high school. Now, some of those kids may go on and get their GED afterwards, but they don't complete high school. And the same was true with African American kids too. That's the graduation rate is around 60%, which is not good. It's terrible.
And John, why specifically in your area is the Native American number so low?
Well, again, that's a whole another broadcast.
That's a separate show.
Really, well, it really has a lot of factors to it. One of them is historic trauma, where Native Americans have over the years experienced just a whole lot of hardships with poverty and low income and unemployment and all that kind of stuff. And if you grew up in that environment, we talk about self-confidence. You don't have confidence anymore. You say, well, geez, I just can't do this. And so that's one big reason. And plus, too, we just haven't taken the time to design schools to fit the needs of kids. For some reason, I can't figure that out really. When I was principal at Red Lake High School, we had two schools. We had the traditional high school, and then we had an alternative school, which did fit the needs of kids. But ironically, the alternative school was for really the kids that were really struggling. And we designed programs that met their needs, and we graduated 100% of those students. So it can be done. But it's a lot of hard work. Alternative education is a lot of hard work, takes a lot of energy. Teachers don't like to change. Sometimes parents don't like to change, but it can be done.
Absolutely. And you also went to another area where there was a need for educational growth. How did you get from Minnesota to Camden, New Jersey? And what was that like for you?
Right. Well, my wife and I had just come out of the Peace Corps. We weren't married at the time, and we were married. We got out of the Peace Corps in '67, and we were married in '68. And for our honeymoon, and we decided that because the Peace Corps opens your eyes up to all kinds of different challenges, we wanted to see what it was like to work in the inner city. And so it was either going into the Teacher Corps, which was a big program at the time. We also applied for that, but we ended up in North Camden, which was kind of a Teacher Corps assignment, where we had to teach and live in the inner city in North Camden. And then also I directed a recreation program there in North Camden. And so we went to North Camden on our honeymoon, believe it or not, and stayed in the Walt Whitman Hotel, which I don't believe is there anymore. It's been torn down. So I think we're the only people probably ever, to go to North Camden for a honeymoon, But it was a great experience. I really, truly appreciate the time in North Camden and working in the inner city. And I wasn't afraid to walk the streets at night, lived in a row house, and people knew me, the kids knew me. This goes all again back to forming relationships with your students and with the people. And so that's what we did. They knew us, we knew them. And my wife and I taught English as a second language. And we were the first ones in really New Jersey to do that. It was a new program. And we had a lot of a lot of Puerto Rican children in North Camden, and so we taught English to them. So
amazing experience. And again, tell me now the step before that, the Peace Corps. My wife and I had a chance to volunteer as well with Augustinian volunteers right when we finished college. And I actually lived in Italy and she lived in England, but you served in the Peace Corps. Can you tell me about that experience?
Well, again, I was a junior in high school, in college at the time, and I really got kind of tired of college, and I thought I would want to do something different. And so I applied for the Peace Corps. And in those days, you could do it. You could apply for the Peace Corps back in the early days and as a high school graduate and be accepted.
Wow.
And so you didn't have to be a college graduate, where you now have to be a college graduate, I believe. And so I applied for the Peace Corps, got accepted, went to Texas Christian University for our training, 3 months, and went off to Puerto Rico for another month of training, and then went to Uruguay, where we were our project was Uruguayan basketball, and the Uruguayans wanted some help to upgrade their basketball teams, and so they thought by having some Americans come down there and teach and coach basketball, they could do that. Unfortunately, not many of the volunteers that went down there to coach basketball were really that good basketball players, but we knew more than they did. So here's the role of a teacher. We knew more than they did about basketball, and so I had 4 sports teams that I coached, and they were from different levels. There were no at the time. There were no athletics in the schools. After schools, the kids went to sports clubs, and it could be a bicycle club, a volleyball club, a swimming club.
Big soccer too, right?
Pardon me?
A big soccer, I would bet, right?
Yeah, that was the number one. Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah. So, but the Peace Corps experience, I would recommend that for anybody. Going out of college, it just opens up your eyes to so many other experiences, and from the Peace Corps, then we ended up also working in Iran for some time, teaching in Iran. And so it's just you want to get out and see the world, and the Peace Corps does that for you.
Wow. And then it led you back to working with Hispanic students, Puerto Rican students in Camden, New Jersey.
Yeah, it's just the culture is everything. I used to tell my staff at Red Lake, because it was not an easy job teaching on a reservation school. And I said to my teachers one day, I said, teaching here at Red Lake is kind of like being on vacation. And they said, what do you mean, John? It's tough. It's challenging. I said, what do you mean by being on vacation? I said, well, if you were in Germany, for example, teaching in Germany, wouldn't that like being on vacation? You learn different culture, learn different language. I said, it's the same thing here at Red Lake. You have different culture, different language. I mean, so take advantage of the opportunity to be here at Red Lake and learn about the native culture. And so that was my take on that.
Fantastic. And with all that experience, right, you have motivated so many people. You have written 22 books, as well as over 1,400 educational columns for your local newspaper. Tell me about your inspiration here. Tell me about the different books, your process of writing,
Yeah. Really, teachers never really know when their influence stops. And I had a 5th grade teacher, Miss Reek, her name was, and one time we had to write an essay and read it in front of the class. And so I did that. And when I read the essay, the kids were really howling with laughter. And I thought, wow, maybe I've got something here. Maybe I did. And the same thing happened when I was in a junior in high school. My English teacher, I wrote something using a beatnik language at the time. And my English teacher said, John, you ought to give this to the school newspaper and put it in there. And I said, nah, I don't think kids want to read that. But anyway, so those 2 people really influenced my writing. And writing always came easy for me in college. Writing got me through college, and I've never left the campus unless I had my thesis and dissertation completed. So, and that was because writing was kind of easy for me. But just because I wrote those books, I always tell people, say, anybody can write a book. But selling the book, that's the issue. And you know that too, Andrew, that you have to sell the book once you write it. And that's where the tough part comes. And so I don't consider myself that good of a writer. I'm still waiting for that best-selling book. And, maybe I'll be another Amanda Gorman someday, right? Wow. She wrote something.
She'll be at the Super Bowl too, yeah.
Yeah, right.
Well, we bought our copies of this, and I want to make an impact on this community. and get to that number and serve those underrepresented families, serve those kids that maybe aren't getting those opportunities for, like you said, a cycle of trauma, a cycle of poor educational experiences. And then how can we as the ed leaders, how can we as the teachers help serve those kids? So while it might not be a bestseller, it's going to be a bestseller here in this community, and I appreciate your work.
All right. Thanks,
John,
Andrew.
let
Yeah.
me ask you about the column. Is it a daily column, a weekly column?
It's comes out weekly, and I started out in 1992, and I don't think I missed more than 2 or 3 weeks since 1992. And again, it's supposed to be on education, but sometimes I drift away from that. But it always comes back to the 100% graduation rate. The paper allows me to put in a little blurb about what the parents and teachers can do to that. My last column, by the way, was "Do you know Amanda?" and Gorman, and I talked about poetry. And I said in the column, I said, every English teacher right now should get on their knees and thank the God Almighty because of Amanda Gorman. Just having her read her poem to the class should be inspiration enough for kids to write poetry. She did a super job. She wants to be president in 2026 and 2036, so she just might do it.
Wow. And again, to feature her at the Super Bowl, poetry, a young, successful African-American woman, it is really a tremendous thing for our country. And yes, as an educator, I'm hoping it raises poetry as well. John, you mentioned two teachers that had an influence on you, again, pushing you to write and kind of opening your mind there. But Dr. Don, and I don't want to mispronounce this, is it Glines or Glines?
Glines, Don Glines, yeah.
Was a mentor, he was a mentor of yours and helped
yeah. When I came back from Iran, so I had only like 3 or 4 years of teaching experience coming back from Iran, and I wanted to teach. I thought it'd be nice to teach in a campus school, in a laboratory school. I don't know if Andrew, if you're old enough, but almost every state university in the United States, state teachers college, had a laboratory school, and it was right on campus, and the student teachers would go there for their training, and every state college in Minnesota had one, and the one at Mankato was called the Wilson Campus School. And so I wrote to I didn't know who he was at the time. I wrote to the principal and said, "Do you have any openings there?" And he said, "Well, we've got an opening for a fellowship. If you go on a fellowship, you can earn your specialist degree as well as teach here full time, and we pay a little bit of stipend." But he said, also, he says, when you left her I was an undergraduate at Mankato. When you left her as an undergraduate, the school has changed considerably by then. And he had implemented 69 changes in the first year, Andrew.
Wow.
The first thing he did was to turn off the bells. He took all of the teachers' belongings in their classroom and dumped them in the middle of the gymnasium floor. And so when teachers came to school at opening day, they went to the classroom, it was bare. And they said, "Where's my stuff?" He said, "Well, you go to the gymnasium and look for it." And so he started making changes. And he made 69 changes that first year. It was a non-graded, no periods, continuous progress, light of school concept, 7 days of the week, and year-round school, and on and on and on. And so that's where I went. And it took me, a little bit just to get used to it. I mean, so kids would come to us in the morning. Every morning there was a different schedule every morning for kids, and kids would come to us, and we would they would see what we're offering. I was teaching physical education at the time. They would see what we're offering in the physical education department that day. They'd write down on their schedule a certain thing, then go to the art department or the math department, write down what they were doing. And so a student, for example, could stay in art the whole day. They could stay in home economics the whole day, or they could just sit and read the whole day, or just go to the cafeteria the whole day. A big part of that was the advisor-advisee program. And so that was really important. But anyway, so Don Glines was instrumental in getting me started and looking at schools in a different way. And he's still doing the same today. He's 90 years old, but still as energetic as anybody I know. In fact, we're working on another book right now together. But he ended up being a consultant for the State Department of Education in California. Was responsible for getting year-round school started in California. At one time, made 1,500 keynote addresses around the United States to all kinds of educational conferences. So he was a big name in education at one time back in the 60s, 70s, and 80s.
Wow. Well, fantastic. And he had an impact on you, and
Yeah, yeah, he
obviously
did.
are still impacting others. So fantastic. John, we're going to get to rapid fire here. It's a fan favorite part of the show. But before we do that, was there any other messages, maybe to any parents listening or teachers that are listening, about things that they could do to again continue to
Well,
improve in our education?
when you get back to your schools, teachers or parents too, ask your Board of Education what your graduation rate goal is. If it's not 100%, try to persuade them that it should be 100% because every student is capable of graduating. And if it is 100%, don't just keep it a secret. So often, in fact, in most school districts, the only people that know the graduation rate goal is the superintendent and maybe a few of the principals and maybe the school board chair. It should be a community kind of a thing. And so, get that broadcast that loud and clear throughout the community that our graduation rate goal is 100%, and everybody should be telling kids you need to graduate. If we all did that, it's like wearing your mask. We learned how to wear a mask within a period of several weeks. The importance of that, we can do the same thing with the graduation rate.
Amen, John. I love it. Let's get rolling rapid fire. These are quick answers. The first thing that comes to you. Are you ready?
Yeah.
He's ready. Here we go. Last book you read.
Last book I read was The Camino Wind with John Grisham. It's a great book.
Yes, that was good. Last movie you saw.
I saw a movie last night. It was called Radio Days, a Woody Allen movie. Woody Allen, my favorite director, writer, and he does some great work. Radio Days. It's an old movie, but it's a funny movie.
You've traveled the world. You mentioned some of the places. Where's been your favorite place to travel?
It's hard to say, but I think just going to Red Lake, visiting the reservation is like going back into another country. I know the people. I know some of the language. I enjoy the culture. So I think just going to Red Lake which is about 15 miles from where I live now. Yep.
Are they closed, John? Is it like a private?
It's one of the two reservations in the United States. It's a closed reservation. They're their own sovereign nation.
Oh,
At one time, when I first started there, teaching there in 1985, we had to have a passport to get on the reservation. It was kind of a gimmick, but they just wanted to show people that we're their sovereign nation. They have their own tribal courts, police force, and so on. Of course, tribal government. But their school is a public school, which is kind of ironic.
Yeah, that's interesting. Okay. You talked about 100% graduation rate. We know that's a passion of yours. Writing is a passion of yours. What's something that gets under your skin? What's a pet peeve of yours?
Pet peeve of mine is superintendents that don't realize that retaining and gaining students should be their primary objective. When they lose students, they lose thousands and thousands of dollars because of the state aids. And so why can't they make it a priority to get those students back? Then they wouldn't have to worry about passing referendums and getting money to build new schools. Just retain those students and attract more students. Open up schools that will attract you. I don't know if in New York, but do you have open enrollment in New York, Andrew? Where kids from other school districts can go to your school district?
No, you go in the community that you live in.
Okay, yeah, okay. In Minnesota, we have open enrollment, so kids in a neighboring school district can go to Bemidji, or kids in Bemidji can go to Black Duck, for example, which there is an element of competition there, but which is good. And so it behooves school districts to create the most attractive schools they can, but they really haven't done that much. It really hasn't. It really hasn't progressed into really being that much, and so. But anyway, I forgot your question again.
That's okay. We had asked about a pet peeve of yours, and you talked about losing.
Oh, pet peeve, yeah. Superintendents, right, who don't do more to retrain and gain students. Yeah.
Okay.
Right.
I know in a successful school, when I see.
Well, I'll tell you, the reason why I went into teaching because of the smell of the school. When I left Waterville High School, the small school, and my graduating class was 60, I just, I didn't want to. Every time I walked into high school, there was a certain smell there of a chemical formula, maybe the locker room smell. But every school has a distinct smell, And I guess I wanted teaching because of that smell. And so when I would go into a school, it's the first thing I notice is the smell at school. Boy, it's great, you know. I hope it's a good smell, you know. Even some of the inner city schools and school I've been in, you know, they all have their own inviting smell. It's terrific, you know.
Best purchase under $100 that has had a great impact on your life.
Well, it'd probably be I have a black, pretty good sized black sled that I use that probably would cost me about $30 that I use to haul wood in. And
Mm,
so I load my wood in the black sled, haul it up the stairs. I get my exercise the same way, and it doesn't seem to break. I throw it from our balcony down into the snow and ice. It doesn't seem to break, and so that was a good purchase.
I like it. Something about John Eggers that people do not know about.
When I was in fifth grade, for some reason, I developed a speech impediment. And it was with me for 10, 20, 30 years afterwards. Doing something like this, I could never have done this. And so I
Wow.
joined something called International Toastmasters. And I'm sure you have probably you have a club in Port Jervis. Usually large communities do. But I joined Toastmasters, and because it forced me to speak in public, that's what I needed. I needed someone to kick me in the rear and evaluate my speaking. And even though I could teach pretty well, and I was also homecoming king and the football captain, I could not do anything like even getting on the phone, asking a girl for a date, uh, speaking on a panel it was just worse than getting Novocaine, worse than going to the dentist. You know,
Wow, that's interesting. Yeah, I wouldn't have known that. Because
it took
you're
me
a
a long time to get over it. Yeah, it took me a long time to get over it.
it's like the movie The King's Speech.
Kind of like that. Yeah. If you know of anybody that has a speech impediment, well, I tell you, it's a struggle. It's really a struggle.
Our current president, right? He had one.
Right. And so did Amanda Gorman. You
Yeah.
know, well,
Wow.
they got over. She got over it pretty quickly, you know. And although I think Biden had to struggle with it a little more than
Sure.
he did, but nevertheless they did lick it.
John, we're at the end of our show here. I'd love to end with a quote. Do you have one that's a favorite for you?
Yeah, I learned a lot since I knew it all. I learned a lot since I knew it all. Boy, they want that on my tombstone.
Well, you're learning, you're teaching. I love your message. You are a breath of fresh air, and you're not someone who's given up on education. You know,
No,
we want to continue to improve and grow, but you're still plugging away.
thanks, Andrew. I really appreciate it.
Well,
Good luck to you in your assignment.
and well, thank you. John's website is at the bottom here, johnrogereggers.com. If you're interested in having him come speak to your school board, your administration, he's not shy about that. John, what would be the best way for people to get in touch with you?
They could go to my they can go to my website because all the information is on there. My email address, my phone number. So that would be just fine, you know. Or they could just contact you and get your phone number, or get your email from you, and I could email them. They could email me and so on and so forth. But yeah,
Absolutely. And that website's on the bottom. If you're watching here or if you're listening on iTunes, it's johnrogereggers.com. We are going to bring our song back up here. And John, I want to thank you again. This was show number 154, everyone. John Eggers, and I'm Andrew Murata, the host of the program. I am at Andrew Murata21 on Twitter. Be safe. Continue to work hard for your schools and your communities. And thank you so much for tuning in, everyone. John, stay on the line, John.
okay.
All right, let's get this music.